Today, we're building a roadmap for anyone who's hit that really frustrating wall with their English. You've done the work, you know the grammar, you know the words, but you still feel like you don't sound, well, natural. So let's get into it and break down exactly how to get past that.
Does this feel familiar? I bet it does. It's such a common feeling for so many learners. You've reached a high level, you can probably write a perfect email. But when you start speaking, something just feels a little off, right? You are definitely not alone, and trust me, the solution is not to just go bury your head in another grammar book.
So the very first thing we have to do is kind of redefine our goal. We are not chasing perfection here. The goal isn't a zero accent or sounding like you stepped out of a textbook. Real fluency is about sounding natural for the situation you're in. It's about speaking automatically without having to translate every single word in your head. And it's about picking the right words for the right moment. It's all about flow, not just following rules.
Okay, so our first big stop is something I like to call the music of English. Linguists have a fancier word for it, prosody, but music really captures what it is. And honestly, this is probably the single biggest difference between textbook English and how people actually speak in the real world.
This music is made up of 4 key things. First, you've got contractions and reductions, saying gonna instead of going to, or wanna instead of want to. Second, it's about linking words together so they flow, like how an apple just becomes an apple. Third, it's about stressing the important words in a sentence, usually the nouns and verbs, to make them pop. And finally, it's about intonation, the way your voice goes up and down to show meaning and emotion. Let me show you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. If you were reading from a book, you might say, "What do you want to do?" Every word is separate and clear. But if you're talking to a friend, you're going to hear, "What do you want to do?" See how it all just mushes together? That connected, smooth sound, that's the natural rhythm of English we're aiming for. So how in the world do you practice this stuff? There's a technique called shadowing, and it is incredibly powerful. All you do is you listen to a native speaker, just a short clip, and you try to speak right along with them, almost at the exact same time. You're just copying their rhythm, their pitch, everything. But here's the secret sauce. Record yourself doing it. When you listen back and compare your version to the original, you'll hear exactly where you can tweak your own music. It's a game changer. So, once you start getting the hang of the music, what do you fill it with? Well, you need the right building blocks. And here's the thing. Native speakers aren't usually building sentences one word at a time. A lot of the time, they're just grabbing pre-made phrases or chunks that they've used 1,000 times before. Just take a look at some of these. These are super common errors, and you can see why they happen. They're often direct translations from another language. But to a native speaker, they just sound a little off. For example, we don't do a mistake, we make one. Rain isn't strong, it's heavy. Getting these natural word pairings, these chunks into your brain, is a massive, massive shortcut to sounding more fluent. So here's a really practical thing you can start doing today. Stop just learning single words. Start a personal phrase book. Your goal should be to collect maybe 300 to 500 of these chunks that are super relevant to your life, to your job, to your hobbies. These become your go-to building blocks for any conversation. Okay, so you've got the rhythm, you're collecting your chunks. Now we need to talk about the social glue that holds real conversations together. These are kind of like the unwritten rules of how to actually interact with people. These little words and sounds might seem tiny, but they are absolutely crucial. You have backchannels like or right, or gotcha, that just show the other person you're listening. Then there are discourse markers like well, so, anyway, which help you transition from one idea to the next. Hedges like kind of or a bit help you soften what you're saying so you don't sound too direct. And repairs like what I mean is give you a smooth way to correct yourself if you mess up. These are basically the lubricants that make a conversation run smoothly. And a huge part of sounding natural is also about matching your language to this situation. It's called register. Think about it. In a formal email to your boss, you might write, "I would like to request your assistance." But you would never say that to a friend. You just say, "Hey, could you give me a hand?" Knowing when to be formal and when to be casual, that is a real sign of advanced fluency. All right, that was a lot of theory. So the big question is, how do we turn all of this into an actual plan, something you can really do? Let's get practical. Here's a simple 2-week plan you can literally start tomorrow. So check this out. It's a 2-week sprint that covers everything we've talked about, and it only takes about 20 to 30 minutes a day. Every day, you'll do 5 minutes of shadowing for your rhythm and spend about 10 minutes adding new chunks to your phrasebook. Then, a couple of times a week, you'll have a real conversation, and this part is key, you'll ask for feedback. Then, once a week, you can do a little deep dive on one aspect of pronunciation, or try a 4-3-2 sprint, where you talk about one topic for 4 minutes, then 3, then 2, to build up speed. It's totally manageable, but it's an incredibly powerful routine. So, how will you know all this is actually working? Well, you'll start noticing a few things. Native speakers will stop slowing down and simplifying their language for you. You'll catch yourself thinking or even daydreaming in English without even trying. And the best sign of all, people will stop commenting on your English and just engage with your ideas. Your language basically becomes invisible, which means your message is what's shining through. So, to wrap this up, I want to leave you with one question to think about. After everything we've covered, the music, the chunks, the conversational glue, what is the one small, unnatural habit that you are going to start breaking this week? Seriously, pick one thing. Maybe it's just trying shadowing for 5 minutes. Because that one small step, that's how your journey to real, natural fluency actually begins.